I've got nothing else. I think I'm good, unless you've got more.
You have nothing more to say about Arcane? We've completed it?
That's not entirely true. Now we can. There is hypotheses. I could talk about what I want and what could happen in the next season for days.
Yeah.
And I could say how good Arcane is for forever. But for the sake of keeping this episode under a day long, we shouldn't open that can of beans.
Okay. Can of beans.
I don't know why I called it a can of beans.
I think it's a can of worms, but a baked bean.
A baked bean. I think I tried to combine spill those beans and can of worms.
And a can of worms.
And it just didn't work. That can of beans.
Can of beans. Don't open that can of beans.
Don't. They're expired.
Hello there.
Don't have a good day. Have a great day.
Talk to me, Goose.
I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
Why so serious?
World! I could do this all day.
Are you watching closely?
Welcome, everybody, to the One-Eyed Film Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Mossberg. I'm here with Josh again, who it feels like he hasn't been on in a long time.
Cheers to that.
Chug, 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 chug.
Jesus will turn it into wine in my body. Oh, chugging.
No, don't actually. Okay.
I shouldn't have done that. I'm crying. I'm not crying. You're crying. So hydrated for this episode. Hydrate or dihydrate, guys.
I'm not gonna lie, you cut out for all but 2 frames of your chug, so I saw none of it except you were like up in the air, and then you go, and then you're like, hydrated, guys.
I don't know if that should stay in. I still had a little bit left.
I think you gotta do another one just to prove to me and without cutting out from the video.
I don't think I can.
Don't do it.
You might see the water again if I try to finish the rest of this.
Oh no, we don't want that.
All
right. We're talking about Arcane today, and we are talking about Arcane a second time. We've already done it once, which is really weird. Following up, a really fun episode because we talked about Vi, Jinx, Vander, and Silco, answering the question if Silco was a good dad. Which you should go listen to that episode if you haven't already. It was one of our first ones actually because we were so excited because you, Will, and I all really like that. Sadly, Will can't join us today. Rest in peace, Will. Just kidding. He's just busy.
He's just in pieces, probably working on something.
We talked about those characters for the first part, and now we're going to kind of talk about the supporting characters, and there's a few of them, so we're hopefully going to keep it moving, but I'm excited. One thing I wanted to point out in Arcane, why do you think Arcane is so good? If you had to boil it down to one thing.
I think I used a seasoning analogy once upon a time.
You love that one.
I really like food. But Arcane not only is like the main story just so creative and detailed, but the side plots, the side characters are also just so well crafted. Like you could make a whole episode, which is what we're doing right now, on the side characters because they also have a lot of meaning. They also have a lot of depth in what they do. It's great. Yeah, somebody should totally make a whole podcast episode dedicated to just the side characters. That'd be really cool, wouldn't it? We should hop on that. We should do an episode on that sometime. I wish I knew a guy. Me too. Okay, I like that description of why Arcane is good. I feel like it can be boiled down even more. And it's from something that a YouTuber who's kind of devoted his YouTubing to talking about Arcane. And it's Schnee. It's like Mr. Schnee from Peter Pan, but it's Schnee. I'll link him in the description. He's got some great ones. He pointed out that Arcane is full of contrasts. There's usually one character, and then you list their qualities. You take the opposite of that, and there's almost always a character who contrasts them, even if they don't interact that much. You see that very obviously. Jinx and Vi, Silco and Vander, and many others. But the hard part is that there's no good guy in all of Arcane. It's just protagonist and antagonist that we're meant to feel for. And yes, there's some things that the bad guys do where they're evil. Like Silco, murder is not a second thought for him. He does it with multiple characters. That kind of shows he's evil. And yet Vi is also not hesitant to kill somebody either. Like their morals aren't that much different. It's just that one is more sympathetic and we feel for them. And obviously they're written as the protagonist. But there's no good guy or bad guy. The people from the underworld
they're all kind of scum. They're low lives. Even if they're in the first act are more sympathetic and we can feel for them, they're still criminals for the most part. The people from Piltover, not necessarily the people who live there, but the characters that we see, like Marcus, even Jace and Victor, they have their flaws. They're not perfect, obviously. No character is going to be perfect, but Jace kind of gets power hungry. Victor gets hungry for innovation and always wants more. I mean, yes, that's a character flaw. I would say Victor is probably one of the closest to being morally correct, and yet he's still misleaded, like any character is. I don't want to say that any character has to be Jesus, who is perfect, but most characters find themselves not on a moral path simply because there is no good guy. Or if their morals aren't correct, then they're misleaded, like Heimerdinger. And we'll talk about him in a second, of like, does he properly understand the world of innovation and magic? And that's his whole arc, is kind of warning against it, but then having major pushback and losing his spot on the council.
Yeah, and to go, just to piggyback off of that a bit, every character is just very human. You could completely understand why each person's motives are the way that they are, and their actions are backed up by their story. It's like even Silco. You start thinking about his character, and I know he's wrong. I know he's not doing the right thing. I'm not saying he's right, but I'm saying I get it, and that's what makes the whole story so great, because that's not just for the main characters that we talked about in the last episode. That's also for the side supporting characters, where you can see what they're going through, you can see the story develop, and you can put yourself in their shoes and say that you do the same thing, or at least for the most part. There are a few things that I definitely think I would do differently, but that's just because I'm me and they're them.
And you have a different moral compass than they would, but you understand completely where they're coming from. That's, I think, where the best villains come from, or any characters in general. We're just made to sympathize with the heroes automatically. And then when it comes to characters like Killmonger from Black Panther or Thanos from Infinity War, they explain why they're doing what they're doing. They're not just evil for evil's sake. You feel for them because of how they explain themselves. In some sense, you understand that what their methods are wrong. And like Heimerdinger, as we kind of transition out of the general arcane overlook and into Heimerdinger's character, he really limits himself. There is this conflict within himself and within the scientist group. And how do they make these advancements, or do they yield to Heimerdinger's warning and say, this has not ended up good in the past, and he's the only one who would have known that. Jace really pushes back on him, especially in the roundtable scene where he basically shuns Heimerdinger for saying, you're too old and you need to get out because progress is here. Progress is now, old man.
Yeah, and probably one of the worst decisions Jace made in the entire show, because yes, there's the saying, out with the old, in with the new. You've got to be able to adapt to the new circumstances you have, but the wisdom from the previous ages needs to stay. Heimerdinger has seen things. He knows magic. He knows that it can definitely be used in an evil way, and he's trying to warn for that. But I think there needs to be some sort of a balance in how you adapt to change, and how you adapt to the things that are happening with the progress. The city of progress is what Jace is looking for. But that progress is coming at the cost of possibly the downfall of Piltover and the whole city, and Heimerdinger is scared for that. And so we see him as the wise old man that people like to push off because they don't really want to adhere to the wisdom because they don't understand.
I think I have something interesting that we probably couldn't have talked about really last year when we did our episode, or even when this show came out. And I think we did an episode on it, but now let's combine that topic and Arcane, and it's AI.
Oh.
This is the same position that Heimerdinger is in. There are a lot of people who are on both sides of the aisle. There is the Jaces who are saying, full send, let's figure out how to use AI to our advantage, to the best that it can be, to be our personal assistants, to drive the little robots, to be our servants.
Yeah.
And then there's the people on the other side who are like, don't do it. Not necessarily because of any experience, but because that's not the way technology should evolve to be something that's even a part of our lives. It should be minimally used, maybe to make systems a little bit smarter, but it should not have access to our phones and know everything about us. One, that's a privacy thing, that's a discussion in and of itself. But the development of AI and how it's used and the disgusting things that are being made with it, and how do you put a limit on that? And then you have people like the Facebook grandmas who, there's a trend right now that keeps popping up whenever the times I open Facebook once a week, where there's AI Jesus posts, and it's him.
They're all over.
He's like in mud and he's helping rescue workers, and then every single comment in there is like, "Amen, amen, thank you, Jesus." I'm like, it's AI, and the picture doesn't make sense. He's holding a pair of legs that aren't connected to anything. Jesus is a helicopter. I don't know what's going on.
It's so funny. It's so funny.
It's funny, but think about the grandmas, not necessarily grandmas. I don't want to diss our grandmas, but the people who just aren't aware that it's AI. Now we're kind of building our shield for AI and being like, that really looks fake. But there's a lot of people, even myself, guard is down. You really can't tell from even this year since ChatGPT, a little over a year since ChatGPT has existed, and then the picture models that have come out being able to generate anything. And you really can't tell unless you're really looking for it. And even then, some of them are flawless. This Sora AI that's coming out looks great, but it's so scary how realistic it looks. Have you seen the Sora stuff?
I don't think I have. I've only seen the ChatGPT stuff.
Do your thing that you were thinking about, and I'm going to look it up.
So I also think it's really funny that we're also starting to see AI videos. And
that's what Sora is.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I have seen it, but I've already seen so many videos, so many pictures of people like having people make lava eating competitions, and it's just obviously fake. But I think the previous generations saying like, don't believe everything you see on the internet, that is some of the most valuable bits of wisdom that you can have now, especially in this day and age where stuff is progressing like it was in Piltover. You got to be so cautious about it, and you got to really like put a critical thinking cap on, because some of this stuff is insane.
Let's watch some Sora videos really quick, because without the disclaimer that it's AI, it would take a hot second to realize something. Now, you can look at the fingers, you can look at the limbs, it still really is having trouble with object permanence, like a leg. When a leg is wide, that looks like it could be filmed. That is insane.
No way.
It's the ones that get more wacky that you're like, oh, of course that is. And there's still like a smoothness, like that bird just disappeared. There's still a smoothness that you can tell that is AI. That almost look flawless. If you keep watching the legs, it gets very wonky. But this is what a lot of people have been saying is great about it, is like landscape coverage shots. Most of these are pretty decent and could be used really well.
Faces are still a little, they don't quite feel human.
They don't, but they're getting way better. If you're just doing one face, it usually does really well. Watch these ladies' hands though. Watch her waving. Oh, I think this one gets really weird.
Next dude, perfect trick shot video.
Yeah, AI. All right, we're done with AI, but we're not, because that is basically where Heimerdinger was at with the Arcane, and he's like, don't do this. And a lot of people are like, be very careful of how we advance this, because it's in the same boat, honestly.
Super quick side note on the AI stuff. I actually heard an IGN interview. I heard that they're going to try and make an AI generated video game.
Oh yeah.
Where the land is going to be AI generated, the characters, the character development, and the story is going to be AI generated, to the point where every single time you play through the game, it's a different story, it's a different world. Now they're obviously going to have like a lot of rules set based off of like terrain generation and combat and stuff like that, but this is getting wild to the point where people won't even have to make video, like movies. It's kind of creepy.
It is, but it's totally understandable.
Yeah.
But still, if someone's goal for creating video games is to not touch anything and just say, make me a video game, you still are giving it a prompt. You're still being the ingenuity behind it. There's still an intelligent mind behind the AI. It can't be
creative on its own.
On top of a machine that has been built by an intelligent mind. The machine that built the AI and trained it was still a human who is way more wiser than any AI could be.
Yeah, we're still the alpha. We're still the top of the food chain. Anyways, in Piltover, the progress is scary, but only for the people that know what magic can be. Here's where, to kind of reiterate what we were saying in the beginning, where each person has an understandable like reason for why they say what they say or what they're doing. Because Marcus, he had an experience with magic, and it was good. It saved his mom. That's something that you can't ignore. And Heimerdinger saw destruction. So they both have had experiences with magic. One is good and one is bad, and that's what's driving them for progress or anti-progress. So it makes sense. That's just further telling you why Arcane is just so good, because there's always two sides to the coin, and both sides of the coin just look so good. So when you were saying opposites, like I'd say from the last episode, Silco and Vander are opposites. Vi and Jinx are opposites. But from here, I definitely think Heimerdinger and Marcus are the opposites.
Okay.
It's Marcus, right?
Marcus is the
man of progress? I'm thinking of Jace, aren't I?
Marcus is the general, the Asian-looking guy. You've been calling him Marcus this whole time?
Guys, I gotta apologize. Not in advance. I gotta apologize after the fact. I've been talking about Jace the whole time. I'm so sorry.
I was very confused as to why you said Marcus and Victor were so similar, and I was like, I don't think they ever interact.
I've got the names confused.
All good. Okay. So yeah, I would say Heimerdinger and Jace are opposites.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very obvious. There are those that are super obvious. There are some that are not. So like Vi is also an opposite to Savika. They don't have to just be an opposite of one person. So there can also be pairs of opposites. Let me blow your mind here, unless you've already read my notes.
I haven't. Not all of them.
Jace and Victor, as we talk about them now, are opposites and yet reflections of Silco and Vander. Because they both, in those pairs, there is somebody who wants progress and will do anything to get it. And the other is from the underworld and wants safety for everyone and wants to do it for the people. And there is limits to what they will do. So Vander and Victor, funny enough, V's, and Jason Silco are the pairs. And it's evident the difference between the Piltover version and the Underworld Zon version of those two characters and how they work together or work in opposite, and how they kind of both want the same thing but in different ways. I mean, that's most villain hero differences, is want the same thing but different ways to get it. There's a lot of stories that are written in that way.
That did blow my mind, because they're both trying to make progress for Piltover and then for the Undercity, but both are just very passionate, and they don't understand what they're actually doing, which is Silco and Jace. But then they both end up reaping the consequences of what the progress is. Now, we don't have confirmation, but Jace is most likely dead by the end of the episode. I think so. Yeah. Or yeah, spoiler alert. Because of the rocket. There's no way he lives.
I don't think they're going to kill all those characters that were in their room. I think it'll be mass destruction and chaos. I don't think they're going to die.
Well, true, yes. Was Victor in there? I don't remember.
Didn't Victor die?
No, he turned himself into the thingy thing, and he killed his assistant.
No, he didn't mean to. No, he was almost dead.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that he was dying, and I knew he was dying. That's the whole point. That's his arc.
Yeah.
But I believe he was saved. But in contrast to in comparison to Vander, he was pushing for that change. Same way Vander was insinuated to have pushed for that change when he was fighting on the bridge in the opening scene of the series. But it took a switch to make him realize that it's not worth it. Not that it's not worth it, because he still wants to push for that, whatever their individual goals are. Victor's is harnessing the complete usage of the arcane, and Vander's was living at peace, even though, yes, he was beating up all the enforcers. But it took Vander to realize these girls, we assume they kind of knew each other. Vander saw these girls now without their parents and took him under his wing, and he's like, okay, I'm going to hang up the gauntlets and not touch and not go to war anymore. He knew that the goal should still be there to make peace, yes, but also to defend the underworld, which is where they live. But he knew that it wasn't through fighting anymore. Victor took it had to be the loss of his assistant to make him realize and get a shifted mindset to realize it's not worth it. Even though Jace is like an adult, he still has that youthful passion, and that's probably fueled by his experience with magic. Again, we just did a whole episode on magic not too long ago. I completely forgot about Arcane. There's plenty of magic to go around. And like, does the way that we look at magic in the real world affect how we view magic in fiction, and vice versa? Referencing our episode that we did with Deacon a couple weeks ago about magic and how it's kind of just a tool, and it depends on how you write it. I don't think any of this arcane magic is actually in the real world, so it's perfectly fine to use it as a tool and to tell the story and kind of use it. I think it's very obvious now. They didn't mean it back when they made it, but I'm pretty sure that the arcane can be directly related to AI and how we're going to be developing into the next couple of years. So I think that's cool going forward, and how we will look at it when season 2 comes out this fall. But
I'm so excited.
back to Jace. Jace had experience with magic, and that's what made him so giddy about trying to learn so much about it. And he became the man of progress, and he became the face of Piltover. And again, that got to his head. He really needed Victor to kind of hold him back. Otherwise, he would have just gone off the rails. And that's kind of a friendship that was severely undervalued directly, as in it was given enough screen time, but I don't think enough people talk about that. There's a lot of other things to talk about for sure, but their friendship is one that balances each other, especially, again, opposites. They had similar experiences when they were about to kind of, unalive themselves. And they both stopped each other because on parallel ends of the story, they very much contrast each other and complement each other at the same time. I think the essence of Arcane is yin and yang. And I know that has connotations that relate to ancient Chinese mythology or something, but that is a lot of what Arcane is yin and yang. There's good and bad. There's good with some bad. There's bad with some good, but it all works together and it parallels each other so well. And that's what most of these characters are, in some way or another.
In the story, Piltover and the Undercity are also just a huge parallel. You see different council seats in the Underworld and then council seats in Piltover. It's all one giant just divider. And they both have the same characters, the same parallels on both sides. Now, which one is good in bad and which one is bad and good in this yin-yang hypothetical? Is the Underworld really bad and it has good people in it? Or is it the good and it has bad people in it? Because I would argue that the Undercity is the good guy in this.
They're
because
the protagonist, yes.
Yes, but if you think about it, Silco is the bad in the Undercity. If Silco is gone, Shimmer wouldn't have been bad. Vander, in control, made the Undercity flourish. And now that Ekko is also doing quite a few good things and being able to make progress there, the Undercity doesn't seem that bad, whereas there's so much more greed in the rest of Piltover because of the progress. Now, I have no idea what all of the other characters are actually like. You see a lot more personality in the Undercity, so it's hard for me to say that everyone in Piltover is just a snobby dirtbag because they're in the better part of town. But from the few characters that we have, I definitely see Heimerdinger as being a very good guy. Now, Jason, Victor, they're also good people, but it seems as though they're fighting for the wrong cause because deep down that Heimerdinger is kind of right. And then Mel, she also just kind of feels just off, especially with her backstory. She feels like a conqueror and she feels like she's just really trying to prove that she's powerful by getting into this position. And it feels like Piltover is actually having they're just really trying to fight with greed. There's manipulation going on within the council because you can see that during the play scene where Jace is talking to Mel and stuff like that. There's interrelations where people are just not being truthful or abusing the system and their power to just get what they want. You don't see a lot of what the city life is in the overworld, but from what you see in Way Up, it seems as though it's a pretty messed up place. And the Undercity actually has more structure from what we have seen, because you can see what Ekko's doing. You can also see where Vander was, and he had a very good system going, and he was able to keep stuff calm. But it seems as though the Undercity can be labeled as the good guy.
Yes, I think both have a problem with greed. The Piltover obviously is already rich. That is kind of their insinuation. I believe that's if there had to be an obvious meaning behind the story instead of the ones that we've been unpacking and so many people have done so many videos about. I think it would kind of be the most obvious. I think the most obvious would be rich are bad, poor is not as bad.
Power is corrupting. So that's kind of the whole thing.
Yeah,
you get
that's Jace's arc. That's him getting to be on the council and then immediately banishing the man who, animal, creature, whatever Heimerdinger is, even after all he's done for him, because he's powerful now. And so he let that get to his head. So everyone's climbing this ladder and they're all kicking the people below them. That is what Arcane is about, both in the overworld and both in Piltover and in Zon. I struggle to understand your perspective on why the underworld is so much more structured, because I understand Vander, and Vander wasn't even a leader. He was kind of the guy in charge. There's not really a leader
Yeah.
and yet it's still corrupt and gross because they have, you know, sex houses and a lot of bars and all that.
Yeah.
And then, yes, Ekko brings a lot more control, but it's very sectioned off. It's just their society that seems to be very far away. And then I was going to say under Silco, it's not, but it is very chaotic. So that's why I'm slightly disagreeing with your Underworld statement.
Yeah.
I think you're seeing it that way as they've written it to be protagonist and antagonist.
Yeah.
Even though for 2/3 of the story, the Underworld is under Silco's control.
And I should also preface that even though like it's a very easy protagonist side and it seems as though they're the good side or they're good in the story, they are not good. Because like you said, there is still drugs rampant. There's a power surge going throughout where people are just beating people up over money. We see that in some of the very first scenes. And there's sex houses. There's everything that could be sinful that we are told as Christians not to do down there. So that, I got to preface, they are not good. But it seems as though what's wrong with the Undercity is skin level, and you can see it plainly. Whereas what's wrong with Piltover is deep and rooted, and it's going to tear itself apart from the inside. And you can see that starting to happen.
Wow. That's great.
That's the big point that I want to make.
That's really good, dude.
I wrote that down before this, and I was really proud of it.
Write that down.
Write that down.
Wow, that's really good. Yeah, that makes so much sense. The again, probably paralleled for Zahn and the Undercity. It's surface level, and yet most of the people are good in that they care for each other and they're still kind of a family until Silco kind of enters the picture. Yep. Vander makes a bad call for what some people see it as, or is what some people see it as, and that's when the divide happens down there. At the same time, on the surface, which is also weird because as you realize, they're really on opposite sides of the bridge, and I think they're mostly underground is what the Undercity, but it's like over and down. I don't know.
It's like a mountain. So main Piltover, the downtown area where everyone in Piltover is, that's like on a hill, and then the bridge connects over a river, and then it's in a valley, which is weird.
But then on the Piltover side, there's still a division with leadership, and I believe that kind of will be explored in the second season, especially with more attacks. There was war on the bridge, and there's still the Undercity kind of coming up into Piltover, but especially with Jinx's attack, I think they're going to see a lot more war with each other because of this division and this tyranny that Jace has brought to the table and kind of made himself into.
Now, what my favorite side character that we've mentioned here is Victor. I want to talk about him just a little bit more because I really appreciate the direction that they went with his arc, his story. They could have so easily gone for the jealous brother type story so easily, and you definitely get a little hint of that where Victor wants what Jace has because he has health, he has wealth, and he has the girl. And Victor's got not health, he kills his girl, and he is kind of just living in Jace's shade. I think Victor has some of the most emotional side stories in Arcane because he's fighting against this jealousy, and he still is able to have awesome moments. Like the scene where he's running, and you can kind of flash back to where he was running to chase the boat, and then he was running against the boats, and where he's just running for the first time without his cane. I think that scene is what tied his character together for me and just made it so beautiful.
I think where Jace has been handed everything, Victor has been handed everything, and then life slaps it out of his hand.
Yes.
So he doesn't necessarily have bad luck, as some will call it. It just keeps falling apart for him. And so he's trying to muster everything he can to make this arcane work. And on a related note, you keep saying you keep saying that he killed his girlfriend. Well, first off, he was ignoring her.
Yeah, he was
ignoring her, and she was in love with him. At the same time, I don't know what word would actually be used, but kill sounds intentional.
This is true. It was an accident.
It was an accident, and he felt terrible about it, and that caused him to go to the same place that Jace was and want to throw himself off that cliff or that window because he realized what his actions have done. And he didn't want to do it anymore. You know what
caused his assistant to die? His greed. You can see that because he wanted the full experience of like whatever this arcane body was going to be. And he was ready to give up whatever he had, but he didn't realize that there was possibly collateral damage there. And that greed is what tore him. We didn't really see much of like what he looked like after that incident, did we?
The last few episodes get fuzzy because I've watched the first few. Like, I've started people on the journey so many times, and then I leave them.
Yeah, that's true. You get them going, and then you just push them down the hill, and then
I get them to episode 3. I get them to episode 3.
That's all you need. That's all you need. But greed in this show is a huge theme. Huge. Silco is greedy for trying to bring the independence of Zahn, and he's willing to give up whatever until you realize that it's costing him more than he thinks. With Victor, same with Jace, but we haven't really seen what it's cost him yet because the show ends too much. We just see that a lot, and we see that greed is just running rampant throughout Piltover and Zahn and everything. And it's tearing everything apart, and it's makes you realize that maybe you shouldn't be greedy because it's only brought destruction wherever it follows.
Yeah. I think I'm breezing through the last episode. It kind of starts with Victor reading the letter of his admirer and crying about it, realizing what he's done. And then he's in the courtroom with Jace. And I think that leads up to
The Rocket,
because they're all there. Yeah, because then the next scene is the Vi, Jinx, and Silco.
Best final fight scene ever.
Here, give me a second. I want to listen. Honestly, I think Victor's storyline gets kind of cut off because he has this moment at the beginning of episode 9 where he's realizing what he's done with his experiments and how it's affected this girl. And then he really has the moment with Jace, and Jace kind of talks him down because he tells him what he's going to do and go talk to Silco about brokering a deal. And then they just go to this meeting, and then it ends. It kind of leaves Victor hanging. So I am interested to see how it goes because I don't think they're going to leave it there, even though they have a rocket hurling towards their face.
Yeah, I don't think there's no way all of them die. I definitely think there's going to be heavy injury. Jace can't die. Victor shouldn't. Victor could die.
You know what I think? There's my prediction. Victor is going to be severely wounded, even though he has this arm and leg that has been given to him by the Arcane. And he needs to make that decision. Am I going to die, or am I going to throw myself at the Arcane to live?
Ooh. I want to see that.
He needs to take that step, but he knows what just happened in their life, at the end of episode 8. What just happened is that it was so dangerous it killed somebody else. But it's given him this new life of being able to walk and all that, even if it's dangerous, and he has to make that decision at the beginning of season 2, I think.
That being said, that could be a huge theme throughout the entire show. You could see greed past the point where you're seeing it cost a lot more than you want it to. Like, Victor has seen that. Could be seeing that. Silco saw it, and that could be the whole theme of the next season, where you've already given up so much and you commit to this thing that's just costing you more and more and more and more and more, to the point where you have nothing left to give. And it could be a solemn ending where it's just, I've got nothing left. I gave everything to this cause. Like Silco gave his life to it. Jinx, we have no idea where she's going to go, but Vi could give everything to try and fight for her sister to the point where she doesn't have anything left to give and it just doesn't work. Same with Victor. Same with Jace. This whole theme of giving everything for something that's unattainable could be the theme. And I love that idea. I love it. I absolutely love it.
So Marcus is another side character that I've been told, or people have noted, that he's kind of the weakest character because nothing really happens with him. He just keeps failing. Whoever is his leader, he keeps failing them, whether it's Silco, whether it's the general. He is the anti-Caitlyn, as in all of his qualities are the opposite of Caitlyn, except that they're both enforcers. And that's just interesting to talk about. And the two other things I want to say, because yes, there isn't a lot to talk about, but there's still so much in the weakest character. Marcus's death parallels the opening scene of the series. It helps with Jinx's story arc. I don't know if you remember this, but this is right around the Ekko fight. And Jinx is walking very menacingly. She's actually whistling the tune that she was singing in the opening scene of the series. And then she takes her gun and shoots, I think, End Enforcer, not Marcus, but Marcus is basically bleeding out and dies right there. And that parallels the first thing you see that makes you go, whoa in the first moment of the series is you hear Powder singing, and then you see an explosion of a gun from the Enforcer, and that one shows you the artistic style of this entire series, which is so cool. But that's the opposite of Jinx is now in that position, and she's the antagonist of that situation. And in the same way that Marcus is dying there, he was a parent. The same way that Vi and Powder lost their parents on that bridge. Now, not necessarily, well, yes, because of Jinx, because of her explosion, Marcus is now dying and leaving his daughter the same way that Vi and Powder were left.
That's a huge flip-flop. That's insane. I don't think enough credit goes to the writers. Now, a lot of credit is going to the writers for this, but their ability to make a story have flip-flop parallels and just so much connection. How long ago did the first season of Arcane come out?
2021. It's been 3 years.
It's been that long, and we are still talking about stuff. We're still digesting it. And that flip-flop makes me sad for Marcus's death, yes. But it also just, if you can make a connection back to the beginning with a different character in the same way, but make it more destructive, wow.
Okay, but it's not about Marcus in that moment. Yes, it's sad because he's a parent and his daughter will now be fatherless and motherless, because that's been insinuated in the previous episodes. But when I watched Schnee's video on it, he says that even the worst written character, who is still pretty good compared to other things outside of the series, some good characters in movies are written worse than Marcus is. But as a lazy character who doesn't get much done and his arc doesn't go very far, as in he's just the failure character, his character helps with other characters' contrasts, as in what I just described with Jinx and her former self being orphaned by that same bridge, by that same war, though in different times. Okay, with that being said.
Ooh.
Ooh.
It's so good.
Oh, look who it is. The boy savior.
The only line in the next 2 minutes is what Jinx says there.
And it's still the greatest 2 minutes ever. Oh my gosh.
Walking through this, there is so many breakdowns of this fight scene, but it's one of the best. I think it's the best in the whole series so far. There is a lot of character development just in this, and it's so weird that it happens without any words. So Ekko, in opposition, in contrast to Marcus, is the perfect side character, supporting character, whatever you want to call him. There's so much there, and he's not there for many episodes, but he's still important. So often, this is what Schnee had to say in his analysis. Often in movies, there is the hero, the villain, and then the other, and usually it's a second villain who's kind of trying to distract or cause more chaos. It's in so many, if you look at it. There's the main one, and either a related or an unrelated second bad guy, often to draw out the story a little bit. But Ekko is a second hero. So there's a lot of villains, but they're mostly all connected back to Silco. Ekko is a secondary hero, and that's why we like him so much, is that he's not really given a lot of attention in the first few episodes, and then when this episode rolls around, I believe is it 6 or is it 5? I think it's the end of 6.
It's 6.
You're just all into this character.
Yeah.
Well, 4 starts off with the...
They do show him in 4, and it's
the
pretty,
firelights.
Yeah, the firelights, but you don't know that it's Ekko.
Yeah.
It's not until 6, I'm pretty sure, that you know it's Ekko.
Yeah. Everyone else is a dichotomy. This is what makes Ekko stand out. You can put almost every single character into looking back to the past and regretting, or looking to the future and not paying attention to the past warnings or the present time. Ekko and the firelights live in the present. Everyone else is either stuck in the past or looking to the future. Ekko does what is right now. And that's why he has this community of people where he's caring for them, because all they need is to focus on is right now, the present. And his weakness is at the end of this fight when he looks at Jinx and remembers the past.
Yes.
That's his weakness, is because he's so present focused that when he remembers, it throws him for a loop.
Yeah, he's been living in the present so long that he pushed the past down, and then when he saw Jinx, it all just came right back. And it's basically confirmed there is going to be a form of time traveler or something, because Ekko, he's got the time paint mask on his face. He's got a super ability or whatever in the game that allows him to do that. It's going to have something to do with Heimerdinger and Ekko, I'm sure, making some form. Because if you remember at the end, they kind of give you a sneak peek of what the arcs are going to be. And Heimerdinger and Ekko are going to be doing something together.
Yeah, and especially with Heimerdinger's immortality or long life. They're going to be doing something that possibly Heimerdinger's not a fan of either, because he's like, I know time better than anyone. That's what he says. He says, that's a burden only I can carry, time.
Yes.
And then Ekko is also carrying it, but in a different way, because like you said, in the game he has time travel powers or something, and that's kind of obvious with this possibly magical watch. I don't know.
The watch, it keeps on, like, even during the fight, you keep on seeing Jinx as a kid, and then like bringing up the past, and with the face paint of him having a sand clock. What are they called? Hourglass, where he has an hourglass on his face, and even people have rumored that the way that he was carrying the orb and that little satchel thing was also kind of a reference to one of the time travel abilities in the game. Never played League of Legends, so I'm not 100% confident on there.
But this is the best part of Arcane. It's based on a game, but you don't need to know anything. It could enhance the story a little bit, like knowing that about Ekko. But I didn't know that until after watching the show, and it still was so good. Yeah,
and I'm sure Arcane has got to do something with time travel then. And I'm really excited to see how these talented writers are able to work with it, because it could be great. I have high expectations for it because of how good this first season was, and I'm kind of excited to have my mind blown.
Yeah. I want to talk more about this fight. I think the most obvious thing to note is that it's stylistic and different. Did we talk about this in the first episode?
We have to.
Who cares?
There's no
Who cares?
Round 2. It's top 3 scenes in the show.
I'm curious, what would be your other 2? Or it doesn't necessarily need to be third, but what would be your top 3?
My top 3, I don't know if I could pick, but I don't know if I could pick
it's
between
just,
these
It's just a category.
It's just a category. The flare scene, Guns for Hire, and then this scene, and then the scene where Vi is taken away by Marcus and leaves Jinx there with Silco, because that's what got me hooked. Now, bonus round, Victor running.
Can I add another?
Yes.
Vander.
I didn't even think about that.
I just said Vander.
No. I think Silco sitting next to Vander's monument. That's what it is.
That's what I was gonna say, but it's funny that you got that.
I heard Vander and I'm like, wait, there's another. No,
there's so many good ones.
I think that one's number 1 actually. Silco coming to the realization that Vander was right and that you can't really give up everything. That's number 1. But the other 4 are tied for second.
Can't pick. Anyways, back to the Jinx and Ekko fight. Even if we've already talked about it, the contrast of cartoon style for their memories, and even the premonition that Ekko has, is so jarring when it jumps back to real time. It's so stylized, and then when the watch bounces and rewinds and goes right back to his face, that's in the Arcane style, and this whole scene has been almost grayscale because of how dark it is and how foggy it is. Just going from that orangey, bright style into his black and white face is so jarring and yanks you out of that this is cool moment back into this it's go time.
Yeah.
And something that was pointed out about this scene is that he's obviously knows Jinx very well, because they were the same age. They were the 2 kids who were the same age, as opposed to Clagger and Vi and the other one that I forgot his name.
Doesn't matter.
It does matter. They died.
That's all that they matter for, honestly.
No.
In the nicest way. Only reason they matter is so that they can torment Jinx while she's going psycho.
Yes. But he knows Powder. He knows her style, and I mean, it's insinuated that she shoots the exact same way that she did as a kid, which could be true, but it's more of the style. And so he dodges all her bullets, and then he does that beautiful jump towards her to try and knock her out. But that's as far as his plan goes. You see that in his eyes. He pins her down. He has her under the staff, And when he has the moment of realizing of being sucked back into the past and his memories, his one weakness, he realizes he can't kill his friend. He knows that there is still powder underneath her. And here's another fun fact, because where's my sweater? I don't have my sweater right now. I have a degree in animation. Buy your merch at the link in the description. The animators of Arcane are brilliant. They have a great style. They probably thought on this for years. But they have what's called a rig. Any character has a rig. That means they have invisible bones. That's how they pose them. That's how they make face shapes. Most commonly, it's just for a basic level, it's making your real bones. You have your two arm bones, your hand bones, each of the fingers. You have your neck. Those are the basic things you need. More advanced animation goes into muscles and the way that skin moves over those muscles. You see that a lot in like Lion King. They did a lot of muscle work where contracting and expanding muscles are really taken into consideration because that affects how the creature looks. I don't know how far you go if you go into muscles for human characters, but regardless, something you usually never do is deform the structure unless it's something like character that's transforming, or obviously you have to deform the face because that's how you make face move. But what was really interesting when I watched behind the scenes is that for Jinx, they have her jawline that is the Jinx jawline. It kind of changes from being a kid to being an adult or a teenager because that's puberty. But for a scene like this where they're insinuating that he sees more of powder than he does Jinx, they have a slider that changes her face shape from more jagged being Jinx to literally pulling out the bottom, the sides of her chin and making it more round to look like powder as a kid.
As if he's like seeing a childish version of the current Jinx, making her kind of reminding us too that she didn't used to look so crazy, because she does look crazy, but then it kind of dials it down.
But I don't think you would never see that unless you saw it.
So when we first got the first rig of Jinx, the idea was to try to connect her somehow visually to what she was as a kid. Rounder face, bigger eyes, sadder look.
I think we were a little bit worried about, when we get to the adult Jinx, that we just lose that, that beautiful little soul that just tries to prove to her older sister, like, hey, like, I can do this, believe in me.
Your face.
I wasn't focusing on what my face was doing. That's wild.
I know, but it's such a good detail.
You can just see it. You could see it as they just did a little bit,
and it
made her, and it just completely changed her persona.
But you wouldn't notice it because it's still her. It's like, it's only when you compare side by sides or that slider going immediately back and forth. When it's all in motion, you would never see that, and that's a great thing, a great aspect to it. I think one last thing I want to say about Ekko, about him living in the present. He embodies Matthew 6:27 through 34. Like, my pastor just preached on this. It's about not worrying. And it should be so many people's life verse, because...
What church did you go to? Because that's literally the exact same verse that I was listening to on Sunday. That's why.
Man, this is just so encouraging. Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you of little faith? Do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, and what shall we drink, and what shall we wear? For the pagans run after these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Bars. There's a song.
You took my line. Bars.
Bible equals bars. Get your merch in the link in the description. Wildflower by Clay Finisand? I'm so sorry. Amazing song.
Worry has cost me so much. I guess I'm just learning to trust like a wildflower.
It's so good. It embodies that verse. And it's just saying God's going to take care of you because he takes care of these little things. And because he takes care of these little things, he's going to take care of you. So
And if you ever feel like things are out of control, there's never going to be an emergency council session in some sort of city in heaven between the Trinity of trying to figure out what they're going to do now. There's the plan in play. We're just in it. You just got to trust the process.
And the point I was making about Ekko is that he really doesn't worry about tomorrow. Not to say that he's a Christian, not to say that there's a Yahweh in the Arcane universe, but the principle of focusing on the present, not worrying, don't worry, but also focusing and worrying, quote unquote, on just today. Just do what you need to do today, and whatever comes tomorrow will come tomorrow, and then it'll be today, and tomorrow will be tomorrow. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a convo speaker recently where what they were saying was tomorrow is the busiest day ever. And if you keep on putting more on tomorrow, you're going to forget that there's opportunities today that you can focus on. That'll make everything so much easier. But you can't do that if you're worried about how busy tomorrow is going to be.
And that's the contrast between Ekko and all the other characters. All of the progress people, they're just looking to how can we improve, how can we make it better. And all the people stuck in the past, they're fine with how things are now, but they're also suffering because of what they've sown in their past, whether it's a mistake like Jinx did, or Vi thinking that her sister died because she protected her, when in reality she pushed her away and made her act out. Things like that. People living on both sides of it. And Ekko is content in the present and helping people's needs now. And that's what makes him so cool.
I've got nothing else. I think I'm good, unless you've got more.
You have nothing more to say about Arcane? We've completed it?
That's not entirely true. Now we could there is hypotheses. I could talk about what I want and what could happen in the next season for days.
Yeah.
And I could say how good Arcane is for forever. But for the sake of keeping this episode under a day long, we shouldn't open that can of beans.
Okay. Can of beans.
I don't know why I called it a can of beans.
I think it's a can of worms, but a baked bean.
A baked bean.
I think I tried to combine spill those beans and can of worms.
And a can of worms.
And it just didn't work. That can of beans.
Can of beans. Don't open that can of beans.
Don't. They're expired.
If you had to wrap this up, you have so many things you want from season 2. What's one thing that you want from season 2? What storyline do you want them to follow and how?
I think what we were talking about earlier. Now, I think a good story is one that ignores an optimal outcome.
Yes.
So what I want a story that is going to forget what we want as a fan base to happen. I want a story that is going, like what we were talking about, where like greed is going to make people pay a lot more than they want to, and then just keep paying into this quest that they're on, and then in the end just realize that it was all for nothing. I want that story. I think what I want in the next season is I want people to keep on fighting for whatever they're fighting for, only for it to be at their expense to a point where there's just no return. Everybody's just stuck in a pit. And I want an outcome where Vi obviously comes out on top, but it's Vi and Jinx, but it's not an outcome that's happy. I think Victor, I think he's gonna die. I think Jace, I actually think he's gonna die too. I think Mel is going to somehow take power, and then there's gonna be some sort of, like, Ekko is going to be the saving grace of the story, and Vi is going to team up with Ekko, and then they're gonna come out on top of this, but it's going to be to a point where we've made it, but we don't want to be here because of how much it's cost us. I think that's what I want from season 2. What about you?
I think that's a great assumption, subjecting expectations and making them different than what we expect. I think there are going to be a lot of tough decisions from multiple characters. Like I said, I would love to see us the first episode deal with Jace being majorly injured and Victor somehow being able to help him. I think making him be the person who decides whether Jace lives or dies by using the Arcane is something that should definitely be explored. I think once Jace survives and is given a life by Victor, he now has to decide how he's going to approach this. He's obviously going to want to go to war, and I think that will be the initial reaction.
Yeah.
because that's what Jinx kind of declared. Even though Silco's dead now, Jinx attacked and brought destruction. But Jace is going to have to mend his relationship with Vi after they kind of parted ways. And I think Jace is going to have to come to a decision that is better than what he wants. Now, what he wants is something that seems a lot more logical, but he has to make this decision. He has to decide whether he is for progress or for Piltover. Because Piltover doesn't need progress anymore. They need to survive. They need to exist at the end of the day. And his progress is not going to help that. And he needs to put a stop to it and then team up with probably Jinx and make an agreement with her the same way he almost made an agreement with Silco.
So do you think the season is going to end in independence for Zahn?
I think one of them is going to be destroyed. And I won't say which one because I think it could go either way. I think it will either turn into... The good ending is Piltover being victorious and crushing the underworld so that there's no more bad people, is what they'll say. But what could happen is that the underworld takes over Piltover and turns into, I don't know what the storyline is called, but the Batman crime-ridden Gotham, whatever that storyline is called, where all of the villains escape and run rampant, and they're the ones who are running the city, and there's still people trapped inside of it. I think that could be the other end of it, where the underworld takes control of Piltover, and it's just chaos the same way that was chaos down in the underworld. Like, Silco's vision is achieved, but you realize that it's not really worth it. It's not what it seemed to be.
Yeah. I think it could get to a point where it's, I think what I'm kind of expecting, where there's a point where neither is fully destroyed, but the war is going on and it's just so strong that it's a wasteland, and then the power struggle between both sides is just going to get torn apart, and there's going to be new leaders, and there's going to be, like, I don't think Jace is living the next season, and I think there's going to be a new leader, there's going to be a new man of progress, there's going to be a new person that shows up and is like, all right, live out Jace's idea, but now I'm in charge. But he's going to be bad, and then it's going to be like a whole new dynamic, because now it's just bad versus bad, because Jinx is fighting for Zahn. This is me daydreaming about it, but I think that it's going to turn into a wasteland, and both leaders are going to be torn down to their roots.
Wow.
But we'll see.
I think that could be very interesting. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Me too.
Well, that was a lot.
Wow.
I'm really satisfied with all the things we talked about.
Me too.
I'm going to be linking a lot of videos in the description of extra commentary that you can check out, because there's just so much good stuff. As I've said, we have merch. Go buy that. Don't follow our TikTok. I killed our TikTok for multiple reasons. Some I won't get into, but basically I've found that Instagram and YouTube are kind of where our main audience are, so I'm sticking to those. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you follow on Instagram. Join our Discord. All those things. Stay tuned for the next episodes, because we got some bangers coming up. They're a lot of fun, and they will be coming hot and fast, even if it's 7 days apart. I hate doing outros, man.
How do you just stop talking? I feel like I talk a lot, and you get momentum, and then you keep going, and keep going.
You just shut it down.
Going. I feel like you could, a good way to do that is you could, like, fade it out. But I don't think that's a good way to do it.
Maybe let's just keep, I think, no, you're right. One way to do it is just cut it off right in the middle.